The Tucker 48 was an advanced automobile conceived by Preston Tucker and briefly produced in Chicago in 1948. Only 51 cars were made before the company folded on March 3, 1949, due to negative publicity initiated by the news media, a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation and a heavily publicized stock fraud trial. Speculation exists that the Big Three automakers and Michigan Senator Homer S. Ferguson also had a role in the Tucker Corporation's demise. The 1988 movie, Tucker, The Man and His Dream, is based on Tucker's spirit and the saga surrounding the car's production. The film's director, Francis Ford Coppola, is himself a Tucker owner and displays his vehicle on the grounds of his winery. Coppola's friend and proto-copyright copyright, filmmaker George Lucas, is another notable owner. The Tucker 48's original proposed price was said to be $2,450, but the actual price was closer to $4,000. A 1948 Tucker sedan was featured in the July 26, 2011 installment of NBC's It's Worth What? television show. The car's estimated value at the time was $1,200,000. It is a common error to call the Tucker 48 the Tucker Torpedo. This name was never used in conjunction with the actual production car, and its name was officially Tucker 48. Development. After World War II, the public was ready for totally new car designs, but the Big Three Detroit automakers had not developed any new models since 1941. This provided great opportunities for new, small automakers who could develop new cars more rapidly than the huge legacy automakers. Studebaker was first to introduce an all-new post-war model, but Tucker took a different track, designing a safety car with innovative features and modern styling. His specifications called for a water-cooled aluminum block flat-six rear engine, disc brakes, four-wheel independent suspension, fuel injection, the location of all instruments within reach of the steering wheel, seat belts, and a padded dashboard. Even before the war's end, Preston Tucker began working on plans for his new automobile. In the summer of 1944, he hired noted car designer George S. Lawson to style his new automobile. Lawson worked on the project for over a year and a half before his design debuted publicly, beginning about February 1946 and found as late as a year later in March 1947. Lawson was named the Tucker Corporation's chief stylist in February 1946, immediately upon the corporation's formation. In December 1946, Lawson resigned from the corporation after a disagreement with Preston Tucker, and shortly thereafter, now famous stylist Alex Tremulis of local Chicago design firm Taman and Denison, was hired and furthered the development of the Lawson design. Tucker gave Taman and Denison and Tremulis a 3-month contract, which expired in March 1947 and was not renewed. The culmination of Tremulis' efforts during this phase of design development was featured in a full-page advertisement run in numerous national newspapers in March 1947. Tremulis' design was based directly upon the work of George Lawson, but incorporated his own artistic flair. Simultaneous to Tremulis' departure, Preston Tucker hired a team of 5 designers from the New York design firm J. Gordon Lippincott, who updated Tremulis' design just as Tremulis had done with Lawson's. After a month's absence, Tremulis was rehired and the 2 independent design groups developed full-size clay models side-by-side in direct competition. Surviving photographs of the 2 models reveal that Tremulis' clay design remained unchanged from his March 1947 advertisement proposal and was not chosen for production. The passenger side of the Lippincott team's clay model, which incorporated the side profile developed by Tremulis prior to their arrival, was chosen virtually intact for the production automobile's styling. The Tucker 48's evolving appearance in the corporation's press releases and other promotional materials, combined with suggestive statements such as 15 years of testing produced the car of the year despite no running prototype existing of the Tamiya were instrumental in the SEC filing mail and conspiracy fraud charges against Preston Tucker. The SEC, however, failed to prove their case, and Tucker was acquitted of all charges in January 1950. The corporation never recovered. Tremulis, like George Lawson, was eventually named the Tucker Corporation's chief stylist, although the first reference to him holding this position does not appear until 1948, after the Tucker 48's exterior styling was completed. The Tucker automobile was originally named the Torpedo, but was changed to Tucker 48 around the time of Lawson's departure and Tremulous' arrival, reportedly because Tucker did not want to remind the public of the horrors of World War II. Alex Tremulous has claimed responsibility for dubbing the first prototype automobile the Tin Goose, which is presently used in a loving manner but at the time was considered derogatory. Innovative design features. Some components and features of the car were innovative and ahead of their time. The most recognizable feature of the Tucker 48, a directional third headlight, would activate at steering angles of greater than 10 degrees to light the car's path around corners. At the time, 17 states had laws against cars having more than 2 headlights. Tucker fabricated a cover for the Cyclops center light for use in these states. The car was rear-engined and rear-wheel drive. A perimeter frame surrounded the vehicle for crash protection, as well as a roll bar integrated into the roof. The steering box was behind the front axle to protect the driver in a front-end accident. The instrument panel and all controls were within easy reach of the steering wheel, and the dash was padded for safety. The windshield was made of shatterproof glass and designed to pop out in a collision to protect occupants. The car's parking brake had a separate key so it could be locked in place to prevent theft. The doors extended into the roof, to ease entry and exit. Each Tucker built differed somewhat from the previous car, as each car built was basically a Euro prototype where design features and engineering concepts were tried, improved, or discarded throughout the production cycle. The door releases on the interior of the Tucker came from the Lincoln Zephyr. The steering columns used in the Tucker were donated by Ford and are from the 1941 Lincoln. Preston Tucker held a patent for a collapsible steering column design. A glove box was added to the front door panels instead of the more conventional location in the dash to provide space for the a crash chamber that the Tucker is now famous for. This is a padded area ahead of the passenger seat, free from obstructions, providing the front seat passengers an area to protect themselves in the event of an accident. The engine and transmission were mounted on a separate subframe which was secured with only 6 bolts. The entire drivetrain could thus be lowered and removed from the car in minutes. Tucker envisioned loaner engines being quickly swapped in for service in just 30 minutes. Tucker envisioned several other innovations which were later abandoned. Magnesium wheels, disc brakes, fuel injection, self-sealing tubeless tires, and a direct drive torque converter transmission were all evaluated and or tested but were dropped on the final prototype due to cost, engineering complexity, and lack of time to develop. Tucker initially tried to develop an innovative engine. It was a 589 cubic inches flat 6-cylinder with hemispherical combustion chambers, fuel injection, and overhead valves operated by oil pressure rather than a camshaft. An oil pressure distributor was mounted in line with the ignition distributor and delivered appropriately timed direct oil pressure to open each valve at the proper interval. This unique engine was designed to idle at 100 rpm and cruise at 250, 1200 rpm through the use of direct drive torque converters on each driving wheel instead of a transmission. These features would have been auto industry firsts in 1948, but as engine development proceeded, problems appeared. The 589 engine was installed only in the test chassis and the first prototype. Troubled premiere. The world premiere of the much-hyped Tucker 48 car was set for June 19, 1947. Over 3,000 people showed up at the Tucker factory in Chicago for lunch, a train tour of the plant, and the unveiling of the first Tucker prototype. The unveiling appeared doomed, however, as last-minute problems with the car cropped up. The night before the premiere, 2 of the prototype's independent suspension arms snapped under the car's own weight. Minor engine problems were fixed, and the car was presentable by the time of the premiere. However, the experimental 589 engine was extremely loud. Tucker told the band to play as loud as possible to drown out the noise. As the car was driven onto the platform, the liquid coolant boiled over and some steam escaped from the car, but no one seemed to notice. Drew Pearson, one of the top newspaper columnists of his time, reported publicly that the car was a fraud because it could not go backward and that it went goose geese going down the road. This hurt the public view of Tucker's car, at a time in history when journalists and public officials were more trusted than they are today. Despite the fact that this problem was limited to the first prototype only, a symptom of the speed with which the first car was put together, the damage was done in the court of public opinion. A negative media feeding frenzy resulted. Tucker suffered another setback when his bids to obtain 2 steel mills to provide raw materials for his cars were rejected by the War Assets Administration under a shroud of questionable politics. Continued development, engine. Tucker had promised 150 HP, and his innovative 589 engine was not working out. The large 589 Acceleration engine functioned, but the valvetrain proved problematic and the engine only produced approximately 88 HP. The high oil pressure required a 24-volt electrical system and long cranking time at startup. Having wasted nearly 1 year trying to make the 589 work, Tucker started looking for alternatives. The company first tried the Lycoming aircraft engine, but it would not fit in the car's rear engine compartment. A Franklin air-cooled flat-six engine, the 0335 made by Air-Cooled Motors, fit, and its 166 HP pleased Tucker. He purchased 4 samples for $5,000 each, and his engineers converted the 334 cubic inches engine to water cooling. The Franklin engine was heavily modified by Tucker's engineers, including Eddie Offutt and Tucker's son Preston, Jr. at his Ypsilanti machine shop. Using an aircraft engine in an automotive application required significant modification. Thus, very few parts of the original Franklin engine were retained in the final Tucker engine. This durable modification of the engine was tested at maximum power for 150 hours, the equivalent of 18,000 miles, at full throttle. Tucker quickly bought Air-Cooled Motors for $1.8 million to secure the engine source, then cancelled all of the company's aircraft contracts so that its resources could be focused on making automotive engines for the Tucker Corporation. This was a significant decision, since at the time of Tucker's purchase, Franklin held over 65% of post-war U.S. aviation engine production contracts. The loss of income was substantial. Transmission. With the 589 and its torque converters out, Tucker now needed a transmission to mate with the Franklin 0335. They decided to try adapting designs intended for front-engine front-wheel drive use. The Cord 810/812 4-speed electro-vacuum manual transmissions fit the design requirements and were used initially. The Cord 810/812 could not handle the power and torque of the 0335 engine, shearing off the teeth from first gear if the engine was gunned off the line. In an effort to solve this problem, Tucker and his engineers modified the Cord 810/812 by installing stronger gears and lengthening the case. The modified Cord was named the Tucker Y1 and was installed in most Tuckers. The Cord 810/812 and Tucker Y1 used a Bendix electric vacuum shift mechanism, with no mechanical linkage to the steering column shift lever. These versions has problems with electrical connections and vacuum leaks which hindered shifting, so a new design was needed. A Borg-Warner 3-speed automatic was tested and was installed on car number 1048, but Tucker ultimately wanted to design his own transmission for the car. To solve the transmission problems with a new design, Warren Rice, creator of the Buick Dynaflow transmission, was consulted. A unique continuously variable automatic transmission called the Tuckermatic was designed, which was strong enough to handle the Franklin 0335's power and torque. It was a simple but effective design with double torque converters and only 27 parts, about 90 fewer than normally required for an automatic. The double torque converters allowed a continuously variable drive ratio with only one forward gear and one reverse gear, which used the torque converters to vary the transmission ratio based on load and engine speed. 3 versions of the Tuckermatic were made, the R1, R1-2, and R3. The first version, the R1, was not installed on any of the final cars. it required the engine to be off in order to select a gear. The A1-2 was improved by adding a left-shaft brake to allow gear selection while the engine was running. This version was installed on cars number 1026 and 1042 only. The A3 version had further improvements including a centrifugal clutch to help shifting between forward and reverse even further, but it was never installed in any of the final cars. Because the two torque converters on the Tucker-matic made the engine transmission unit longer, the fuel tank in the Tucker 48 had to be moved from behind the rear seat to in front of the dashboard for all Tuckers from car number 1026 Ford, even though only 2 of them actually had the Tucker-matic installed. This had the added advantage of improving weight distribution on the car. Suspension and body. Suspension designs, especially the front suspension, had to be changed throughout development. Rather than springs, Tucker used an elastomeric 4-wheel independent suspension similar to that which was used on the race cars he developed with Harry Miller at the Indianapolis 500. The rubber elastomers were developed with assistance from the Firestone Tire Company and used a special vulcanization process to produce a specific spring rate. Tucker's suspension designs were plagued by severe stiffness throughout development which, while good for handling, caused front-wheel corner lift when cornering on uneven surfaces. The test bed and the prototype had a double rubber disc-type front and rear suspension, similar to Miller's race cars, which was too weak for the weight of a passenger car. On cars number 1001 and 1002 the rear wheels could not be removed without removing the fender or suspension due to the stiffness of the suspension and the rear wheel arch fender design. On cars number 1003 on the rear fender shape was changed so the tire could be removed easily. Aside from the fender changes, the rear suspension remained the same from car number 1001 on. The front suspension was installed in 3 versions on the car. Cars number 1001 and 1002 used a rubber torsion tube design which suffered from severe tow-in during heavy braking. Tucker then switched to a rubber sandwich-type suspension on cars number 1003 and 1025, however this type was severely stiff. On cars number 1026 on Tucker finally settled on a suspension design with a modified version of the rubber torsion tube with a tow and braking problem corrected. The front bumper of the car was lengthened from car number 1003 on to prevent the center headlight from being the forwardmost point on the car. The lengthened bumper protected the center headlight from being crushed if the car were pulled too close to a wall or barrier. Original 6 Tucker paint color codes, 100 black, 200, waltz blue, 300, green, 400, beige, 500, gray, 600, maroon. Original 3 Tucker interior trim color codes, 900 light green, 910, light blue, 920, light beige. Funding and publicity. Having raised $17 million in a stock issue, one of the first speculative IPOs, Tucker needed more money to continue development of the car. He sold dealerships and distributorships throughout the country. Another moneymaker was the Tucker Accessories program. In order to secure a spot on the Tucker waiting list, future buyers could purchase accessories, like seat covers, radio, and luggage, before their car was built. This brought an additional $2 million into the company. With the final design in place, Preston Tucker took the pre-production cars on the road to show them in towns across the country. The cars were an instant success, with crowds gathering wherever they stopped. One report says that Tucker was pulled over by a police officer intent on getting a better look at the car. To prove the roadworthiness of his cars, Tucker and his engineers ran several cars at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in several endurance tests. During this testing, car number 1027 was rolled 3 times at 95 miles per hour, and the driver walked away with just bruises. During the crash, the windshield popped out as designed, verifying Tucker's safety features were effective. Afterwards, upon replacing a damaged tire, the car started up and was driven off the track. SEC investigation and demise of Tucker Corporation. One of Tucker's most innovative business ideas caused trouble for the company, however. His accessories program raised funds by selling accessories before the car was even in production. After the war, Demand for new cars was greater than dealers could supply, and most dealers had waiting lists for new cars. Preference was given to returning veterans, which meant that non-veterans were bumped down on the waiting lists indefinitely. Tucker's program allowed potential buyers who purchased Tucker accessories to obtain a guaranteed spot on the Tucker dealer waiting list for a Tucker 48 car. This concept was investigated by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the United States Attorney, and led to an indictment of company executives. Although all charges were eventually dropped, the negative publicity destroyed the company and halted production of the car. Tucker 48 Legacy. The first Tucker ever produced was a prototype sedan, known as the Tin Goose. 58 frames and bodies were built at the factory. From these parts, 36 sedans were finished before the factory was closed. After the factory closed but before liquidation of his assets, Tucker retained a core of employees who assembled an additional 14 sedans for a total of 50. A 51st car was partially completed. In the early 1950s, Fort Lauderdale, Florida Fairgrounds owner Nick Jenin purchased over 10 Tuckers, the original Tucker testbed chassis, numerous Tucker parts, photos and documents. He developed a traveling display called the Fabulous Tuckers. He hauled the cars and memorabilia around the country for nearly 10 years, displaying them at fairgrounds and car shows. His display highlighted the questionable policies and SEC fraud investigation which brought Tucker down. When the cars appear at auction, which is rare, they command prices attained by only a few marquee cars. In August 2010, Tucker No. 1045 sold for $1.127 million while Tucker No. 1043 went for $2.915 million at auction in 2012. Remaining Tucker 48s today and original configuration, Replica Vehicles. In 1997, Rob Iden Automotive started work on a replica of the Tucker 48 sedan, which culminated in the release and marketing of the 2001 Iden Automotive new Tucker 48. This replica faithfully recreates the Tucker's external bodywork, but is built on a hot rod chassis with resin-infused plastic body panels. The paint and wheels reflect modern hot rod styling, and the interior is fully modern. It is powered by a mid-mounted Cadillac Northstar V8. Claimed performance is 0–60 in 7 seconds, with a top speed in excess of 120 mph. Ida has built 3 cars. Alleged convertible prototype, a convertible Tucker, alleged to be a partially completed prototype developed in the company's waning days, was completed by car collector Justin Cole of Benchmark Classics in Madison, Wisconsin. There is considerable debate as to the car's authenticity as a convertible, and no documentation has ever been provided to show the Tucker Corporation ever built a convertible prototype. The restorers proved unable to document the supposed convertible prototype's provenance, and the Tucker Automobile Club of America stated it had been provided with no proof of its authenticity and was unable to verify it as such. Tremulous denied there was ever a factory convertible project, official or otherwise, but did state he had been working on body number 57 when the plant shut down, and said specifically, "We were changing the rear window to a full wraparound and had already started cutting the opening for the restyle job." Tucker No. 57 was the only 1949 model produced, as referenced in the Tremulous records, with the rear window styling change. All the other Tuckers were 1948 models including the prototype. The convertible part, whether it happened at the factory or after factory closed, is still in dispute. The convertible was part of a Russo and Steel auction, January 20, €24, 2010. Bidding climbed to $1.5 million, but never reached the seller's reserve. Nascar. Several Tuckers were entered in the Nascar Grand National Series in the 1950s. See also, Tucker, the Man and His Dream. List of defunct United States automobile manufacturers, references. External links, tuckerclub.org, official Tucker Automobile Club of America website, information about the cars, including the locations of all extant examples, the only active message board for enthusiasts to talk Tucker images, classifieds, etc. www.htmgv.org. Henry Ford Museum Tucker exhibit, Rob I. TheConcepts.com The Iden Automotive New Tucker 48 and Lower 48, Automotive History Online Tucker Automobile History and Photos, Tucker 48 Jalopnik Fantasy Garage, Tucker Torpedo Automobile 1948 3D model of the Tucker, Antique Automobile Club thread about the auction of Tucker No. 1010, short-lived odd vehicle collection from Chuck's Toyland, Huntsville Rewound feature about Keller Automobiles.